Hello and welcome to the Bond Economist. My name is Auradeep Nandi, and if you are wondering why there's suddenly a lot of Raghuram Rajan videos popping up in your LinkedIn or YouTube feeds, well, that's not by accident. At the time of filming this video, there's been a media and PR overdrive over Raghuram Rajan's new book, Breaking the Mould, co-authored with Professor Rohit Lamba from Pennsylvania State University. The duo have been giving incessant interviews, be it to global media houses like Bloomberg, to Indian news channels, to policy think tanks, to even my competition, fellow YouTubers. And, let me clarify this at the very beginning. I have a lot of respect for Professor Rajan. He is an incredibly lettered academic, one of the easily recognizable economists globally, ex-chief economic advisor for India, ex-RBI governor, and in fact at one point his name was even rumored to be in the running for the Bank of England governorship. So this is essentially the dream CV for economists. And also, let's not forget, in a world of old, doddering, boring economists, Raghuram Rajan is far more photogenic. And well, the harsh reality is that people like tuning in to good-looking people. I in fact remember that my girlfriend at that time, who had no interest in economics whatsoever, developed a major crush on Raghuram Rajan whenever he would address the media, talk about interest rates, lean on his arm, point at things. She would be like, "Take me, Raghu." But on a more serious note, it is incredibly difficult for economists to get the general public to pay attention to what they're speaking. And for whatever reason, Raghuram Rajan doesn't have that problem. People listen to him. And as for his co-author, Rohit Lamba, well, Rohit and I were actually classmates at Delhi School of Economics. And even at that time, he was something of a prodigy in our class. He went on to do his PhD from Princeton, now is an up-and-coming academic at Penn State, and has worked in the past with Raghuram Rajan. I mean, anyone in my class would have happily bet money that Rohit would be going places. So I have nothing but respect for both these people. But that said, the problem with celebrity economists is that the general public, who may not be tracking economic issues regularly, get easily seduced by their point of view and then start to think that that view must be the gospel truth. Because they think that, hey, this person must be an expert in this field, so he surely knows what he's talking about. Not realizing that nothing is the gospel truth in economics. In physics, if you throw a ball up, it will come down. In economics, you can throw the ball up and then 10 economists will tell you that the ball will go in 10 different directions. So here's what this video does. It unpacks what Raghuram Rajan is saying and why it's generating so much controversy. What is the context of it? What are the problems with this point of view? And how should you, the public, assess if whether Raghuram Rajan and Rohit Lamba are indeed right about what they're prescribing for India? So, to appreciate what they're saying, there are three things that you need to know first. First, India is going through an economic makeover as we speak. For decades since our liberalization in the 90s, we have moved towards a services-driven economy. It accounts for around 66% of our GDP. We're actually quite good at it. In contrast, manufacturing has stagnated at around 18% of GDP. For a comparison, China, its manufacturing share is around 30% of GDP. And this has been for a variety of reasons. For a long time, India remained a license Raj economy with a lot of government control. India has been a regulatory nightmare for getting land, labor and resources. India has ignored infrastructure for a long time. India's fixed investment is around 32% of GDP, while for China, that number is around 42% of GDP. In fact, 10 years back or so, it was around 47% of GDP. So India has been a global laggard in manufacturing and in infrastructure. Which brings me to point number 2. The Modi government decided that enough is enough. So for the last 10 years, we have been going hammer and tongs behind correcting this. The government has poured money into developing infrastructure in a way that we haven't seen in a very long time. We've also done a lot of regulatory reform, cleared up red tape, introduced GST, reduced corporate taxes, increased import duties to protect domestic businesses, and very importantly, the government introduced the PLI, Production Linked Incentive Scheme, which is basically telling manufacturers in key sectors like, say, mobile manufacturing, semiconductors, pharma, batteries, drones, etc., that come to India, make in India, and we will pay you some incentives based on the amount of units that you produce here. So India is effectively giving subsidies to industries to make in India. And third, we are currently in the middle of a tectonic shift which is happening in global manufacturing. US and China trade tensions for the past few years has essentially led to a lot of global companies realizing that they need to move their manufacturing supply chains to friendlier countries, or what's known as friendshoring. So currently there is a once in a generation opportunity for some of the manufacturing that had made China the world's factory and propelled it to economic greatness in the past decades, which is now looking to shift to other countries. And so India is competing with the likes of countries like Vietnam, Mexico, Indonesia to get some of that foreign investment, to get some of that technology transfer, to get some of those jobs. So the world is going through a chaos of deglobalization. And to quote the Game of Thrones, chaos is not a pit, chaos is a ladder.
Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder.
So now that you have a fair idea of the context, what is the problem that Raghuram Rajan and Rohit Lamba are flagging with this direction of India's policy making? So the crux of their argument is this: stop the fetishization of manufacturing, as Raghuram Rajan puts it. According to them, the days of low-cost, labor-intensive manufacturing that got China and other Asian economies into economic prosperity are over. So Government of India, why are you spending so much money and effort trying to get companies to, say, assemble a mobile phone in India, where you need to import everything that you're assembling, where the most valuable part of that phone is actually the chip design and the intellectual property associated with it, which is probably sitting in the US. One of the examples they cite in interviews is the case of an American company, Micron, that is setting up a semiconductor assembly, testing and packaging plant in Gujarat, for which they are getting government support to the tune of 16,500 crore rupees, which the authors calculate is more than 1/3 of what India's central government spends each year on education. And this is only for 5,000 jobs in that factory. So Rajan and Lamba say that, hey, instead of giving money to companies that would anyway come to India because of our large market, let's use that money to invest in health, education, nutrition, creating world-class universities, preparing a highly skilled labor force, and do what you do really well, namely services. So why not upgrade India's human capital instead of upgrading its manufacturing? That way we'll have more chip designers with advanced engineering degrees, or more IT wizards working on cutting edge AI stuff, than factory workers doing basic stuff at a time when most of that work is already being done by advanced machines. And finally, what Rajan and Lamba say in interviews is that, look, democracy is really important, dissent is really important. Unless we have the freedom to protest, how can we explore a good growth model? Kind of hinting to the fact that under the current administration, that's not happening. So, convinced by their arguments? Wait. Here are 4 problems with that point of view. First problem. Unlike what Raghuram Rajan seems to suggest, it is not a given that companies will automatically come to India without any push from our side. A number of countries currently around the world are putting serious money to attract manufacturing, including the US, Germany, Japan, UK. They are pouring in billions of dollars to ensure that industries like semiconductors or batteries remain in their countries. And even for lower end manufacturing that is shifting out of China, there's really tough competition coming from countries like Vietnam and Mexico that are soaking up the companies that are relocating away from China. So it's a really tough marketplace out there. Now, when questioned on this, Raghuram Rajan's reply in a lot of these interviews is, well, why are we even trying to imitate these countries? Why are we trying to outshine them to get manufacturing in India? Which essentially brings me to problem number 2. Let's flip the question. Instead of asking, why should we imitate these countries? The real question that we should be asking is, why is it that countries like the US, Germany, Japan, advanced economies with huge industrial might, who are at the cusp of innovation, with workforces that are far better educated, fed, and healthier than us, why are these countries still allocating billions of dollars to ensure that manufacturing stays with them? Well, part of that answer could be jobs, but I suspect the bigger issue is national security. Countries are realizing that over-relying on China for critical industrial inputs and technology creates unhealthy geopolitical dependence. And so even if it is expensive, countries are ensuring that their access to new age technology, to new age manufacturing remains somewhat protected. And look, we in India face the same problem. We keep going on and on about boycotting Chinese goods whenever there is a border skirmish with China, but the bigger issue is not about us boycotting their goods. It is if they stop selling stuff to us. For instance, a majority of the raw materials that go into producing medicines, also known as active pharmaceutical ingredients, API, a bulk of this is actually imported from China. Tomorrow, if they pull the plug, we will run out of pills, and it will literally pull the plug on a lot of our patients. Same goes for chips. We may be a IT global superpower, but the laptops and computers on which we are doing all of this needs chips that have to be imported. So from a strategic perspective, we cannot afford to be casual about manufacturing in a world where everyone is taking it so seriously. But still, let's address the other major elephant in the room that Rajan and Lamba talk about at length in these interviews. Is it still worth the cost? So let's get back to the example that they cite a lot. The American semiconductor company Micron setting up its factory in Gujarat, where the authors are saying, isn't it irresponsible that you are spending more than 1/3 of your central government budget on education, which is around 16,500 crores, for generating just 5,000 jobs? Now, there are two problems with this argument. First, it's not just about 5,000 jobs in that one factory. See, what the government is trying to do is to use companies like Micron to help create a semiconductor ecosystem in India. You set up one large factory, and soon other smaller factories providing inputs to that factory spring up. You might even find competitor companies setting up base there. So it's no longer just 5,000 workers in that one Micron factory. It's probably 10, 15,000 workers that will be working in other factories related to that Micron factory in that industrial zone. And then people working there in turn will need houses, hotels, restaurants, banks, schools, taxis, flights. And so a services economy develops around these hubs. So now it's not just 5,000 jobs. We are now talking of potentially lakhs of jobs. And by the way, we have done this for automobiles. Think Pune, think Chennai, think Manesar in Haryana. There are townships and mini cities that have developed around auto and auto ancillary hubs in these places. So I would argue that it's a bit sensationalist to say, oh my God, 16,500 crore for only 5,000 jobs, because it's actually much, much more. And the second problem, remember 2019, before the last general elections, Rahul Gandhi had come up with a universal basic income scheme, NYAY, Nyuntam Aay Yojana, basically providing Indians a guaranteed income every month. It could have ended up costing the nation as much as 7 lakh crore rupees every year if the Congress came to power. By the way, that is close to what the central government spends every year on infrastructure, so on roads, railways, ports, etc. And while Raghuram Rajan did say that it's too much to spend, he kind of gave his broad support to that scheme. In fact, there are reports that he advised the Congress on this. At that time, he didn't say, hey, look, why are you spending on this? Wouldn't it be better to instead spend this money to make more schools, to make more hospitals, universities, and boost India's service sector and whatnot? But now, when the government allocates not 7 lakh crore rupees per year, but 2 lakh crore rupees over 5 years to encourage industries to manufacture here, then suddenly that becomes too irresponsible. But the fact of the matter is that as much as economists like to think that they know what's the next big thing to drive the economy in the next decade, none had actually predicted Apple or Microsoft or Google or Uber or Meta before they became such large innovation powerhouses. These companies broke the mold, and now economists pretend to know how and why they became so huge. I mean, even if you asked any economist looking at India in the 90s, post-liberalization, and asked them that, hey, what is going to be that one sector that will drive India in the next 10-20 years? I am pretty sure none of them would have had that foresight or imagination to say, hey, it's not going to be leather, it's not going to be textiles, it's going to be IT. It's only after the Murthis and the Premjis did that entrepreneurial legwork that economists started to say, oh, look, India is so great in IT. So, maybe take it with a pinch of salt when economists, be it Nobel laureates or ex-RBI governors or even yours truly, who have spent most of their lives in classrooms and conferences and haven't done a day's work as an entrepreneur, come to you and tell you that they know the secret to making large cutting-edge companies that will revolutionize the economy. Because in most cases, they don't. For more such insights, like, share and subscribe to The Bond Economist.